Hi, this is Dr. Adrian Tenerife Sacristan and welcome to our online classroom at Kuya Prof TV.
Kuya Prof TV gives something cool, useful, and a life-changing tool.
Once again, welcome to our class. Our topic today is about understanding international trade. But before we discuss that, let's talk about first objectives of this lesson. Number one, after studying this module, you should be able to explain international trade. Number two, explain how government regulates businesses through international trade policies and laws. Number three, identify the four major cost components in international trade. Number four, identify the 5 factors that have been conducive to trade facilitation. And number 5, explain why the government must intervene or regulate business and their international affairs. Let me borrow this quotation from a particular online educator. Did you know that countries around the world are limited when it comes to the amount of sugar that they can export to the United States? With the US huge demand for sugar, why would their government can cap the amount countries can export to the United States? You may be surprised with the answer because it is really very complicated. Let me borrow from this quotation from a particular online educator. Did you know that countries around the world are limited when it comes to the amount of sugar that they can export to the United States? With the US huge demand for sugar, why would their government cap the amount countries can export to the United States? You may be surprised with the answer because it is really very complicated. In this lesson, we'll examine why governments sometimes intervene in international trade. Look at the different policy instruments available for governments to influence international trade and discuss the arguments against the strategic trade policy. We will analyze why there is governmental intervention in international trade or the exchange of goods between countries in the world. Now let's talk about international trade. There are different organizations and individuals who gave their idea about international trade, but almost of them have the same meaning. The organization defined international trade as the exchange of capital goods and services across international borders or territories because there is a need or want of goods or services. In most countries, such trade represents a significant share of gross domestic product. Another defined it as the exchange of goods and services between countries. These definitions provide companies way for trading globally that gives consumers and countries the opportunity to be exposed to goods and services not available in their own countries or which would be more expensive domestically. Indeed, it only shows that international trade allows countries to expand their market share for both goods and services that otherwise may not have been available locally. In a final analysis, as a student of international business and trade management, you will be able to realize that through international trade, the market became more competitive, which results in more competitive pricing, which brings a cheaper product home that the consumer enjoy. Okay, now I have encountered more readings about international trade, and for us to understand that, let me share with you some of them. The fundamental truth is that international trade was key to the rise of the global economy, where supply and demand and therefore prices both are affected by global events. Political change in Asia, for example, could result in an increase in the cost of labor, thereby increasing the manufacturing cost of an American sneaker company based in Malaysia, which would then result in increase in the price change at your local mall. A decrease in the cost of labor, on the other hand, would likely result in you having to pay less for your new shoes. A product that is sold to the global market is called an export, and a product that is bought from global market is an import. Imports or exports. Imports and exports are accounted for in a country's current account in the balance of payments. Global trade allows wealthy countries to use their resources, whether labor, technology, or capital, more effectively. Since countries are endowed with different assets and natural resources, such as land, labor, capital, and technology, some countries may produce the same good more efficiently and therefore sell it more cheaply than other countries. If a country cannot efficiently produce an item, it can obtain the item by trading with another country that can. This is unknown as this is known as specialization in international trade. Now, let's talk about free trade versus protectionism because this is a very important topic in international trade. As with all theories, there are opposing views. Okay, international trade has two contrasting views regarding the level of control placed on trade. Number one, free trade. Okay, free trade is also called as laissez-faire, a policy by which the government does not discriminate against imports or interfere with exports by applying tariffs to imports or subsidies to exports. A free trade policy does not necessarily imply, however, that a country abandons all control and taxation of imports and exports. Number two, protectionism. It is a policy of protecting domestic industries against foreign competition by means of tariffs, subsidies, imports quotas, or other restrictions or handicaps placed on the imports of foreign competitors. Protectionist policies have been implemented by many countries, despite the fact that virtually all mainstream economists agree that the world economy generally benefits from free trade. This development in the history of business opens up the opportunity for specialization and therefore more efficient use of resources. International trade really gave a variety of wide potential to take full advantage of a country's capacity to create and gain high-quality products and services. However, opponents of global free trade have argued that international trade still allows for inefficiencies that leave third world countries in a disadvantaged position, such as the Philippines. What is certain is that the international economy is in the state of continual change and it calls for a very member country to catch up. Now, let's talk about the four T's in international trade. You can see in our illustration in the monitor, in your screen, the four T's of international trade. Now, there are four major cost components in international trade, as I mentioned a while ago, and it is known as the four T's. Number one, transaction cost. The cost related to the economic exchange behind trade. It can include the gathering of information, negotiating, and enforcing contracts, letters of credit, and transactions, including monetary exchange rates if a transaction takes place in another currency. Transactions taking place within a corporation are commonly lower than for transactions taking place between corporations. Still, with e-commerce, they have declined substantially. Number two, letter T, is tariff and non-tariff cost. Levies imposed by government on a realized trade flow, they can involve a direct monetary cost according to the product being traded. For example, agricultural goods, finished goods, and petroleum, etc., or standards to be abided for a product to be allowed entry into a foreign market. A variety of multilateral or lateral and bilateral arrangements have reduced tariffs and internationally recognized standards. For example, ISO have a marginalized non-tariff barriers. Number three, letter T in 40s is the transport cost. The full cost of shipping goods from the point of production to the point of consumption. Containerization, intermodal transportation, and economies of scale have reduced transport costs significantly. Number 40 is the time cost. The delays related to the lag between an order and the moment it is received by the purchaser, long-distance international trade is often related to time delays that can be compounded by custom inspection delays. Supply chain management strategies are able to mitigate effectively time constraints, namely through the inventory in transit concept. Now let's talk about the 5 factors that have been conducive to trade facilitation in recent decades. Number 1, integration. It is a process such as the emergence of economic blocs and the decrease of tariffs at a global scale through agreements, promoted trade as regulatory regimes were harmonized. One straightforward measure of integration relates to custom delays, which can be a significant trade impediment since they add uncertainty in supply chain management. Number 2 is standardization. It concerns the setting of a common and ubiquitous frame of reference over information and physical flows. Standards facilitate trade since those abiding by them benefit from reliable, interoperable, and compatible goods and services, which often results in lower production, distribution, and maintenance costs. Production systems are more flexible and embedded. It is effectively productive to maintain a network of geographically diversified inputs, which favors exchanges of commodities, parts, and services. Number 4, transport. Transport efficiency has increased significantly because of innovations and improvements in the modes and infrastructures in terms of their capacity and throughput. And lastly, number 5, transactional. Transactional efficiency. The financial sector also played a significant role in integrating global trade, namely by providing investment, capital, and credit for international commercial transactions. For instance, a letter of credit may be issued based upon an export contract. Okay, now let's proceed to the next, the political government intervention. Government really intervene in any international activities in their own country. There are actually 2 reasons for government in international trade, political and economic. The political arguments for trade interventions are plentiful, so let's take a look at each one. The first political reason is to protect jobs and overall industries from international business. For example, if countries were able to flood the US market with their sugar, then domestic producers would lose business. Jobs along with the entire sugar industry could be lost if the sugar was able to be purchased cheaper in a continuous amounts. Another key political reason for government intervention in trade is the protection of national security. Sugar would not be classified in this example, but any defense-related industry such as semiconductors or aerospace would garner protection. A more vengeful reason for intervention would be due to political retaliation as part of a foreign policy. For example, when the US develops tension with foreign country over terrorism support or the handling of an international crisis, one weapon in the government's arsenal is to set up trade restrictions to potentially hurt the country's economy. The protection of consumers is another key reason for government interventions. This prevents countries from exporting products to the US that are not up to US standards. These products can hurt consumers. An example of this is the recent China lead paint disaster with children's toys. Government are also trade policies to improve human rights with other countries. Countries that employ strict human rights laws can be rewarded with a most favored nation status. This designation means that the country is able to export goods with very low tariffs and other beneficial terms. Now, that ends our discussion about international trade. Okay, so I hope you learned something very important information today. And if you think there are other students who needs to know this information, please don't hesitate to share this video to them. And I would like to see you again in our next lesson. Thank you very much.